Having the Sage of Strength as an escort for Avin is frankly unfair. The monsters crawling along the road are dispatched with lightning speed thanks to Gawain's protection. The two make it back to Theta in the blink of an eye and find Jimenez drinking in the bar, distraught over losing track of Karamas, so distraught that he just leaves behind the 4th volume of Laban the Swift without so much as even acknowledging Avin's presence. Before they leave for the next step, Gawain stops Avin in the middle of Theta and asks him to turn around, to find Rutis following behind them. Gawain mused that he had sensed her since they left Valkid and surmises that she has something to say to Avin. Gladly excusing himself, Gawain heads off to the bar and gives the two a chance to speak with each other. Left alone with Rutis for the first time in forever, Avin approaches her and finally properly thanks Rutis for saving him, many times now by this point. However, Rutis tells Avin that saving him was more for her own conscience than anything else. She came here for a separate reason altogether. She was here to finally tell Avin about her life story, something that she was previously unwilling to divulge in Gia. Rutis and Ruka lived with their parents in a remote village, tucked away in an unassuming part of the continent. Her father was a skilled smith, and her mother was a farmer and baker. Their lives were not wealthy, but living in a small village like that, they didn't have to be. Their existence alone was warm and happy, and every day was a blessing. Both her parents were devout believers of Bardus, and prayers to the god of light echoed through their house every night. Even so, Bardus had forsaken them. 5 years ago, when Rutis was 11 and Ruka 9, their village was attacked by monsters and wiped off the map. Both her parents lost their lives in that attack. The sight of her parents' death was traumatizing. Both of them tried their best to smile until their last breath, asking Rutis to be happy, while all she could do was cradle an unconscious Ruka in her arms while crying her heart out. Thus began their lives as orphans. In the name of survival, Rutis had to resort to petty theft to keep Ruka fed. Every time she was forced to steal, the feeling of guilt only intensified, which in turn manifested into a growing hatred for Bardus. In her heart, she knows that Bardus had abandoned her family in their time of need. The god that her parents paid prayers to every night did nothing to protect them. And that's when she met Belias. To destroy this flawed, imperfect world and recreate a new utopia free of strife and suffering. That principle became engraved in her mind, a guiding light in her darkest hour. Deciding to follow the cult to realize her ideals, she left Ruka with the kind people of Gia and threw herself into training, believing that Ocum would one day lead her to glory. And then her path eventually crossed with Avin. Now, knowing the true face of Belias and her life's purpose betrayed, Rutis found herself at the end of her ropes. Back in front of Cathedral at the barrier, she really did intend to die for Avin's sake, even if it's out of some warped sense of self-absolution. But as fate would have it, she lived yet again. Though now Rutis is a wanted target by the cult of Ocum, unwilling to return to Ruka for fear of endangering him and unable to return to Belias' side, Rutis resolved to now travel the world to rediscover herself, and came here to bid farewell to Avin. Giving her heartfelt wish for Avin to succeed in his mission and rescue Eimelle, Rutis turns to leave. But that's when it finally happened. Avin calls out to her and asks her the fateful question, if she will be willing to travel with him instead. Rutis is shocked and questions Avin why he would be so willing to make this offer, knowing that she was a part of Ocum's cult and knowing that betrayal could be just around the corner. But Avin dismisses those worries, believing that Rutis is a genuinely nice person who has already done a lot for him. It doesn't matter that she's being hunted, it's not like Avin doesn't have a target on him by this point either. Both of them have suffered great loss and heartbreak in their respective ways. Being two lost souls, each seeking a new purpose, it feels almost fitting for them to find each other now. While Rutis quietly remarks on the circumstances that have brought them here, she comments that the loss of purpose feels as if she has sunk into a strangling mire. Though their path forward remains uncertain, she resolves to see everything through to the bitter end by Avin's side. Two former enemies, now united through heart-rending circumstances, have finally found each other during both of their darkest moments. Avin and Rutis seek out Gawain in the bar, who seem to understand the situation immediately, simply telling them that the boat Qurar had prepared for them can easily fit 3. The trio continue their journey out of Theta, proceeding along a narrow footpath northwards and into the small fishing village of Dorks, where the boat to Vermillion is docked. Though in this quiet, unassuming place, Avin manages to run into Karamus again. Per their agreement, Avin tells him the story of his adventures since they last met to provide him with more writing material, but this time the contents seem to be wrapped in tragedy. The great author gives pause at Avin's tale, giving him his most heartfelt condolences, and reassures him that Miles' passing will not be included in his manuscript. Avin, however, thinks about it and gives him the signal to proceed. Though the initial circumstances of their meeting were dubious, the tales of Laban the Swift had, in a way, come to embody his and Miles' journey in a special way. It wouldn't be right to stop or change anything now. Respecting Avin's decision, Karamus decides to go ahead with the next tragic volume, promising Avin that in Miles' memory he will put every ounce of his effort into making this novel series the best the world has ever seen. Leaving the author to his work, the 3 boarded the boat and sailed onward to Vermillion, navigating the small rickety dinghy through rocky seas. When they finally landed, they beheld the ruins of an ancient civilization before them. Gawain introduces these ruins as those left behind by a long-lost race of the distant past, known today only as the Blue People, or in another term, the Benthonic people. Though not many people today even remember their existence, this civilization was known for their incredible technological prowess, constructing many marvelous structures that are not only impossible to replicate even in modern times, but also remain operational to this day. The Shrine of Revelation deep within the Isle of Truth is one such location. Avin and Rutis wonder what could have brought this civilization to ruin, an answer that even Gawain is unaware of. He does mention the leading theory that their technological advancement also eventually led to their demise, though he suspects that no one alive today knows the true story of their downfall. Coming to the entrance of the shrine, the 3 found a remarkably sturdy door, so massive that it took the combined efforts of Avin and Gawain to push open. The shrine behind the doors, contrary to the ruins just outside, is remarkably well preserved. The 3 of them descend to the bottom of the shrine and discover that they are not alone. A strange robed man was already inside, studying the mural drawn at the end of the shrine, depicting a white and black dragon entwined with each other, trying to discern its meaning. Gawain steps up and remarks that the mural depicts the gods of light and darkness, Bardus and Ocum, in the forms that the Benthonic people have interpreted them as. The man accepts this interpretation and turns to greet the 3 visitors. He introduces himself as Mitchell the Laphaven, a simple traveler here to seek knowledge. Though Avin, Rutis, and Gawain return his greeting, Rutis quickly brings up the elephant in the room. Initial suspicions of finding someone in these ruins lost to common knowledge aside, how did Mitchell even get in? They had come through the only entrance, an entrance that took them a great deal of effort to open. Mitchell visibly panics as he is unable to produce a good answer. sheepishly coming up with a clumsy lie that he definitely put the doors back up after opening it himself, a lie so unbelievable both Avin and Rutis continue to regard him with glares of disbelief. Though Gawain steps up and diffuses the situation. Verusisla is an ancient and sacred site, open to all who seek knowledge, and despite his more than suspicious circumstance, Gawain doesn't sense any ill will from Mitchell and is willing to drop the topic if he does not wish to answer. Relieved that he is in the clear, Mitchell excuses himself and lets the three of them begin their business inside the shrine. Though they are now on Verusisla, another problem quickly presented itself. Avin's group have no idea how to actually operate the Shrine of Revelations to show them the vision that they desired. Even after offering both the Cabeza and Quadruple, the shrine refused to answer. Mitchell, who apparently had not left, interjects and offers his aid, claiming that he is very experienced with these ruins in his homeland, and can help the three if they desire it. Though Avin and Rutis are still unwilling to fully trust him, they reluctantly acquiesce, seeing that they really can't make the shrine activate on their own. Instructing them to focus, Mitchell chants a strange incantation powering on the shrine. As the pillars around them light up, the world around them seems to spin and twist as the Cabeza and Quadruple are lifted into the air, warping into visions of foreign locations, appearing to them clear as day. The first vision takes them to a remote village, aboard a massive ship. Gawain identifies this place as Quitt, a small lake village west of Valkid. As the vision panned to the north of Quitt, away from the playing children, a buried tomb is shown. And unbelievably, a third fragment of Bardus appears from within, joining the Cabeza and the Quadruple. The image shifts, changing to a brand new location, showing a young shaman in solemn meditation. Gawain identifies this place as one of high elevation, pinpointing it as Garden Hill, a village built atop massive cliffs beside the two cities of Barun. As the shaman moved to another similar tomb, the fourth fragment appears. Once again, the world twists, and to Avin's shock, it was the Lookout Cottage, where he spent 8 years under Lemurus' care alongside Mile. While the scene moved toward the north into a forested ruin where Avin recalls spending his childhood days playing with Mile just north out of the cottage, the fifth fragment appears, buried where Avin would have never expected. The scene moves to a dilapidated mausoleum. Amidst decrepit buildings and countless tombs, Gawain is brought to a shocked silence. At the end of this tomb, a much younger Magnum is seen, offering white flowers to the deceased, and the final fragment appears. Bathed in heavenly light, the 6 fragments surround a mysterious sword of a magnificent caliber and disappears within it, bringing an end to the vision as the shrine powers back down. Though the location of the fragments have been shown, Rutis is puzzled by the strange blade shown at the end. Realizing that the revelation shown to them may be deeper than realized, Gawain suggests returning to Valkid to discuss their next steps with Archbishop Krar. Though before they leave, the three turn around, only to find that Mitchell is nowhere to be seen, vanishing just as mysteriously as he appeared. While Avin and Rutis are still aloof about Mitchell, Gawain is sure that they will meet again, commenting that his attire, accent, and mannerism are all very strange. it is likely that he isn't from Elfilden, a statement that shocks Avin. Someone not from Elfilden? How's that even possible? At the finishing line of his journey, Avin had lost both his sister and his best friend, a blow that had plunged him into the darkest depths of despair. After visiting the ancient ruined Isle of Truth, the path to his future was shown through the remaining fragments of Bardus, and the image of a blade gleaming with brilliant silver light. Though he is yet unsure of the significance behind these visions, Avin has placed his faith in his new quest to collect the remaining fragments, knowing that it may help him reconnect the severed thread of his destiny. On the way back to Valkid, Avin clutches Miles' guardian bell atop the rocky boat, basking in its purifying chime, as if it would dissolve him into the azure sea. The crew regroups with Archbishop Krar and summarizes the revelation that they have seen, breaking down the vision into two major components: the remaining 4 fragments of Bardus, as well as the mysterious sword seen at the end. Krar hears this and recalls an ancient prophecy, which he recites to the group as thus: "The divided body of Bardus shall imbue its powers of divinity onto a blade stronger than steel, yet lighter than a feather, so that it may open a path of light through a rampart of darkness. The blade's name shall be Alucian, and its bearer shall be named." Smiling, Krar stops reciting the prophecy there, much to Avin's confusion. Thinking back on the location shown to them, the Archbishop realizes that they are the shrines of the 4 elemental guardian deities: the deity of soothing waters, Scotia; the deity of flowing winds, Idun; the deity of bountiful harvests, Nephthys; and the deity of blazing flames, Zar. Avin recognizes the names of Nephthys and Idun, the 2 gods venerated in Word Village and Borun respectively by the local populace. The people of the past who have worshipped their local deities have long built shrines to host them, and it seems clear that each of the 4 elemental deities hold one of the remaining pieces of the God of Light. However, one final question remains. Alucian, alongside the elemental fragments of Bardus, holds the power to break open the barriers surrounding Cathedral. But this brings up another question. Where would such a sword even be found? Rutus suddenly remembers the claim of a metal stronger than steel but lighter than plumes, the same metal that Borgheid had attacked Gia to procure, Mirage metal. Gawain too knows of it, but just as Foreman Castle had once told the group, the processes to refine Mirage metal is currently beyond the ken of mankind, and thus far, Gia Factory cannot even refine Mirage metal into a dagger, let alone the magnificent blades shown in their visions. Gawain decides to set off, intending to visit Gia to work with the factories to refine the metal, as well as paying Sage Dinerkin a visit in the Prayer Woods to procure his aid as well. Leaving the defense of Valkid to the Holy Guard, Gawain asks Avin and Rutus to take care of finding the remaining fragments of Bardus, and quickly sets off. With their new mission of traveling the world anew to seek the 4 artifacts, Krar suggests for Avin and Rutus to travel in the same order of the vision, and that means starting with the lake village of Quitt, just a stone's throw west of Valkid, where the deity of water, Scotia, is slumbering. But before they leave, Krar stops Rutis and asks her a question that had been on his mind. Krar confesses that he had been contemplating the endless struggle between light and darkness as of late, and is questioning what the meaning behind this conflict even amounts to. Amongst the Church of Bardus, there are figures who leverage their positions of power only for corrupt personal gain. And in the cult of Ocum, there are individuals like Rutis who are earnestly striving for their future. When judged from this angle, which side is truly righteous? Rutis ponders the question briefly and gives her answer. While it's true that absolute good and evil cannot be demarcated with a simple declaration of affiliation, she is sure of one thing. Up until now, she has never really thought and acted for herself, but instead had resigned herself as a puppet for the cult of Ocum, blindly believing in a righteous cause that she now knows to be false. Krar acknowledges her answer and comes to his conclusion. Neither the path of light nor the path of darkness can lead one to the truth, and the correct path is one forged by their own hands. Asking Avin and Rutis to continue to guide each other through their coming journey, the Archbishop bids the two farewell. With his new partner in tow and a brand new mission, Avin sets off, his next destination being the village of Quitt. The two make their way to the western exit out of Valkid, just beside the local branch of the Adventurers Guild, but find a panicked church soldier sprinting into the guild and pleading for assistance. Turns out the magical barrier surrounding Valkid, which had always kept threats to Valkid at bay, has weakened as of late, and a group of monsters have gone as far as the city gates. The church is here to send out an urgent call for any able adventurers to go help. Even though their mission is important, Avin and Rutis decide that they cannot leave Valkid during its time of need and volunteer to help. The grateful church soldier points them to the northeastern exit out of the city, towards Theta, the complete opposite direction of Quitt. Regardless, the two go on this brief detour and head out, only to find that they weren't the first ones to the scene. Caught in the middle of battle, Douglas appears before Avin, already throwing himself into the crisis head first. Avin cheerfully calls out to him and gets Douglas's attention. They share a brief and lofty reunion, but decide to save the talking for later. Joining Douglas once again, Avin and Rutis help him put down the monster threat with no trouble at all. The Holy Guard thanks the three for their aid and return to their posts, leaving Avin and Douglas with some time to finally properly catch up. Douglas tells Avin that since they last met, he had wanted to return to work in New Barun, but the recently intensifying monster attacks on Valkid had kept him busy here. But fortunately, being tied up in deuces gave them the chance to meet again. He spots Rutis and mistakes her as Avin's sister, boldly introducing himself to who he believes is Eimelle. This case of mistaken identity causes both Avin and Rutis to stand there awkwardly given recent events. Douglas senses the sudden awkwardness in the air and tries to divert the topic by asking about Mile, unknowingly spiraling the situation further downward. Realizing that something big must have happened, Douglas awkwardly apologizes and treats the two to a meal, asking Avin to tell him the full story of what's happened, if he wants to. Over some food, Douglas is fully caught up on the situation and joins Avin in commiseration over Mile and Eimelle. Avin admits to Douglas that even now he still blames himself for what's happened, living with the guilt that if he did not drag Mile away from home, this tragedy could have been prevented. Douglas gives Avin the same speech that Mile had given him a long time back, asking Avin to remember the most important thing in his life. Douglas tells Avin that Mile's initial question to him, asking him whether or not his own pride is more important than the legacy of the Thunderblade, is something that he's still processing today. Asking Avin to also remind himself on what it is he must do, Douglas encourages him to pick himself up and look onward, so that Mile's sacrifice would not be in vain. Hearing Douglas's pep talk, Avin chins up quite a bit, and the topic moves back to Avin's mission of collecting the fragments of Bardus. Knowing that his next journey is the nearby village of Quitt, Douglas gladly offers his aid and rejoins Avin's cause. Though Rutis is initially apprehensive about involving more individuals into this potentially extremely dangerous mission, she is quickly convinced after seeing Douglas and Avin's camaraderie. However, before the group can set off, the Guildmaster approaches Douglas with yet another urgent request. A merchant is being attacked on the road south of Valkid and has sent an emergency request to the guild for aid. Once again, given the urgent nature of the request, Douglas finds it difficult to refuse. Avin and Rutis too decide to join along and help, even if this would be a second detour away from Quitt. The group accepts the request and heads out, but not before running into some familiar faces. First, yet another encounter with Jimenez, who not only has the newest volume of Laban the Swift, but has also heard about what had happened to Mael from Keramis. Passing his condolences along, Jimenez returns to his ever-continuing hunt for the author. But little does he know, Keramis is also in Valkid, who Avin also finds soon after. The author, once again in a creative slump, is given some tidbits about the group's travels by Rutis and perks up again soon after. With the author-editor duel satisfied, the group quickly runs out onto the southern streets, and in no time at all finds the merchant in question. Approaching the merchant named Baraka, the man is more stunned than relieved to see the group, asking them if they were the ones sent to help, then who is that woman? An elegant swordswoman was already on the scene, and the monster lay slain before her. The crew walks up to greet this lady, Douglas enthusiastically complimenting her swordsmanship before getting a good look at her face, and immediately jumps in surprise, blurting out her name, Lucius. Lucius immediately sighs upon being recognized, while an overjoyed Douglas starts bouncing all around her, clamoring at this sudden reunion, which seems to only fuel Lucius's annoyance as Douglas gets increasingly happy. He introduces the irritated Lucius to Avin and Rutis. She is Douglas's fellow disciple to Sword Saint Castor and his first student despite being younger than Douglas. As Douglas reminisces on the days they spent together, with some colorful edits sprinkled in, Lucius has heard enough and takes a swing at him to shut him up. It's clear that Lucius is a lot less excited to see Douglas than he is to see her. Business as usual, Lucius asks the group if they've seen a child with strange powers recently, a vague description that gets her some blank stares from Avin and crew. Deciding that there's nothing left to do here, Lucius turns to leave, though not before Douglas stops her and asks why she's being so cold to him after so long apart. Lucius doesn't entertain a response, instead countering to ask Douglas whether or not he's currently using the Thunderblade, a question that clams him up. Expressing her disappointment and wondering why Castor would ever take a useless pupil like him, Lucius leaves the scene. Seeing her take off, Douglas remarks that she wasn't always like this, but it seems like since the Sword Saint's passing and the two going their separate ways, she's become a lot more bitter toward him. The group take a part of the dead monster away with them as proof of its extermination, but collectively decide to forfeit the reward, seeing it was Lucius who did the job after all. They report the job and learn more about Lucius from the Guildmaster. She had apparently been making quite a name for herself. In fact, the title Sapphire-Eyed Lucius had become quite the household name. She is currently the top-ranking adventurer in all of Deuces. Though Douglas is simultaneously amazed and weirdly proud of his fellow disciples' accomplishments, it seems that Valkid will be in safe hands with Lucius actively working. With all their distractions settled, the group can now finally make their way west to Quitt. Though as soon as they leave the guild, the merchant from before, Baraka, approaches the group with an urgent request. He tells the group that he stashed a ton of his merchandising goods in a cave west of Valkid, known as Pregan Cave. Though recently, Pregan Cave had been quarantined due to a strange monster outbreak. Baraka requests the adventuring group to go there and retrieve his goods for him. However, Avin's group had already spent enough time on detours. Determining that this mission doesn't seem to be a life or death emergency, Douglas exercises their rights to refuse and denies the request, since their journey to Quitt has been delayed long enough already. This leads Baraka on a small tantrum, ranting on how all the adventurers are spoiled and cherry-pick their requests, even that Lucia's woman had turned him down for another reason too. As he's ranting, a strange transparent silhouette seems to run through Valkid, which Rutis manages to pick up. As Avin and Douglas watch Baraka walk into the guild to submit a formal request and leave behind some unkind words for his demeanor, Rutis, aloof as ever, tries to make out the trace of magic she has sensed, to no avail. Deciding to drop the matter for now, the group heads out west towards Quitt. But not long before heading out, they run into Lucius again, standing at a crossroad. The group walks up to greet her, once again receiving her usual cold reception, mostly still aimed at Douglas. Though she remains tight-lipped about her mission, Rutis interrupts their conversation. She has sensed that magical presence again. Before them, a young green-haired child materializes out of thin air. Lucius calls out his name, Jimmy, which spooks the child, causing him to immediately run off toward the north. And disturbingly, some strange monsters that they've never seen before quickly advance from that direction, stopping the group in their tracks. Joining Lucius to dispatch these strange monsters, they talk about what just happened. Rutis identifies the green-haired boy's powers as invisibility magic, a spell so advanced, even Rutis only knows the theory behind the spell and not how to actually cast it. Lucius decides to tell the group more. The boy, Jimmy, was inexplicably born with this power to turn invisible at will. Combined with an unfortunate upbringing, it led Jimmy down a path of delinquency, stealing from others using his talent without a shred of remorse. Rutis, perhaps being shown a mirror into her own life at Lucius's words, falls silent while Avin looks to her with concern. Lucius goes on to explain that her job for a while now was to assume the role as a guardian for Jimmy, to make sure he doesn't cause any trouble. Though being tasked to watch a child that can quite literally vanish at will has proven to be a difficult task. Seeing as he ran off in the same direction that a group of monsters just came from, Avin's group offered to help Lucius. Though initially hesitant to accept the help of others, she eventually relents. Lucius tells the group that to the north of here there is an otherwise unremarkable cave known as Pregan Cave. With that, the group takes their third detour away from Quitt and heads north in pursuit of Jimmy. The team heads into Pregan Cave and immediately spots Jimmy. They catch him muttering to himself about stashing the goods of some dirty merchant. Though as Lucius confronts him, Jimmy gets angry, turns invisible, and runs off, sprinting toward the eastern side of the cave. Lucius leads the party and gives chase, quickly coming to a dead end. But instead of Jimmy, all they find is an empty chest, its contents long since taken away. Avin recalls that Pregan Cave is where that merchant, Baraka, claimed that his goods were stashed away in. Realizing that Jimmy must have been the robber, the team doubles back, this time heading west, hoping to find Jimmy before something terrible happens. The monster outbreak in Pregan Cave is no joke. These strange creatures swarm Avin's teams in droves as they pressed on. They can hardly take 10 steps before another wave will come at them. Barely able to find a breather through this onslaught, Rutis notes that these monsters are unusually well coordinated, as if they're being controlled. And indeed, in the deepest part of the cave, they find a strange man, who Rutis identifies as a member of Ocum's cult. The strange magician immediately summons a new horde of monsters, cornering the team from all sides. Thankfully, the crew is saved by Jimmy, who manages to sneak behind the sorcerer and tackle him, breaking the spell and dispelling the creatures. Sensing the tides have turned, the cultist makes a hasty retreat, putting an end to the monster outbreak. The team walks up to Jimmy, this time actually thanking him for saving them. Seeing that everyone is fine, also high and mighty from just being praised, Jimmy bids the group farewell and quickly walks away. But then, Lucius hears the clinking sound in Jimmy's pockets and quickly intercepts him, exposing the goods that he pilfered by making him jump, confirming that he did indeed steal from the storage chest in Pragon Cave. Jimmy goes invisible and tries to make a break for it, but this time, Lucius was able to grab him before he can run off. Struggling against Lucius's grip, a fuming Jimmy demands to be let go, claiming that this time he's stealing from someone that definitely deserves it. He tells the group that the owner of that storage chest, Baraka, is in reality a dirty merchant in the employ of the now disgraced Bishop Avarice. Baraka had been helping Avarice launder his ill-gotten gains, and all of the items stored in the chest are illegally obtained by Avarice in his many acts of corruption. While Jimmy gets increasingly boisterous as he claims that Baraka deserves to be stolen from and that he's really doing everyone a service in all this, Rutis has finally heard enough and walks forward to shut him up, sternly telling Jimmy that stealing is simply just stealing and nothing else. It carries a price like all other crimes. In this case, the price is Jimmy's innocence. Taking the lecture extremely poorly, Jimmy shouts back at Rutis, saying she doesn't know anything. Jimmy lost his parents at a young age, and petty theft along with his magical gift was what kept him alive. Rutis rebukes that claim, informing Jimmy that she does know his pain. After all, she was just like him once upon a time. Jimmy immediately clams up as Rutis continues. Using her own life as an example, she tells him that no matter how justified he believes his actions are, it will always come back to haunt him in some way. Standing before him now, Rutis expresses her regret of once selling her soul to the devil in the name of survival. Making an earnest case for both of them, Rutis gently tells Jimmy to give up this life of crime before it's too late. Seems like her words did get through to the boy. As Jimmy stands there in silence, the group decides on their next course of action. Lucius will escort Jimmy back to Valkid with all of Baraka's goods. The immoral merchant's items will be turned into the guild and hopefully returned to their rightful owners, while Avin's crew will once again press onward to Quitt. With this matter resolved, Lucius graciously thanks Avin and Rutis for their help, intentionally leaving Douglas out of that particular interaction, and bids farewell to the group, leaving Pragon Cave with Jimmy in tow. Parting with Lucius and Jimmy, Avin, Rutis, and Douglas finally make their way west and arrived at the village of Quitt. Beginning their investigation of a potential shrine, the group first makes a stop at the village chief's house to learn more about Scotia. Quitt's chief, Gota, is more than happy to entertain visitors. He tells the group that Quitt has long been the benefactor of the deity of water. The Moss Lake in Quitt is said to have been blessed by Scotia herself, and the bottom of the lake is filled with a precious alluvial gold known as the Tears of Scotia. The village primarily mines and exports the tears at high prices to the rest of Alfilden, using an exceptionally unique method of placer mining to do so. However, their mining operations were halted recently on account of a large sea monster that had appeared in Moss Lake. The village sent a request to Valkid's Adventurers Guild branch for help to dispatch the monster, and they're expecting some help to arrive soon on this matter. The team decide to explore around Quitt some more and find a dilapidated shrine just north of the village. Recognizing this place as the same location shown to them by the Vision on Vetter Isla, the group decide to look around to find any signs of the fragment of Bardus. They discover a stone mural erected by the ruins, written in ancient texts that they cannot decipher. At least, Avin and Douglas cannot. Rutis, having learned to decipher sacred texts in her time with the cult, was able to translate the writing. According to the mural, this place is indeed the shrine of the water deity Scotia. However, the sanctum itself is sealed off and can only be opened on authority of Scotia's chosen protector. The team unfortunately has no clue who this chosen protector could be, and decide to ask around Quitt village a bit more. They eventually meet a local girl named Lita. Young and innocent, Lita complains to the group that the scary sea monster have made it impossible for the village to do any work. The party promises to play with the bored Lita after their job here is done to placate the young child. Deeper into the village, they find an old local woman named Orma to inquire more about Scotia. Orma tells them that indeed the ruins they saw was the site where Scotia's shrine was first built, but the ruins itself are not the shrine. The true shrine is actually an underground sanctuary, and only the chosen protectors of Scotia can open it. Orma points the party to a villager named Serene, whose family line had in times past been appointed as Scotia's protectors. They find Serene, who happens to be Lita's older sister, in Quitt and ask about her family lineage regarding Scotia. Unfortunately, Serene tells the group that while it's true that her family bloodline had traditionally been Scotia's protectors, the power to commune with Scotia had long been lost. Not her, nor her father, nor even her grandfather could seem to contact Scotia like her ancestors could. With 3 generations of Scotia's protectors having seemingly lost this power, it seems their lead to find Scotia is well and truly dead for now. With nothing else to do in Quitt, the crew whiles away some time before they run into Lucius and Jimmy once again. As it turns out, Lucius was the adventurer dispatched from Wildcat to deal with the matter of Quitt's sea monster problem. After a terse reunion, Lucius leaves to report to Chief Gotha, leaving Jimmy with Avin's crew briefly. Then Lita walks up, coming to collect on the team's earlier promise to play with her. Though after seeing Jimmy, someone around her age, her interest immediately shifted to him instead, quickly forcing Jimmy into service as her playmate. The young urchin, unwilling to hang out with a child, denies her request, which causes Lita to throw a massive tantrum in the middle of the village. The situation quickly turns embarrassing as Lita seemingly cannot be calmed down, forcing Jimmy to relent and reluctantly agree to be Lita's playmate. This at least seems to do the trick. Lita quiets down almost immediately and drags Jimmy away in a game of hide and seek. Despite his unfriendly demeanor, Jimmy seems to warm up to Lita rather quickly. The two become quick friends as they head off to play elsewhere in Quitt. Avin's team decides to head in to check in on Lucius. As everyone meets with Chief Gotha, they collectively decide to all pitch in to help with the extermination of the sea monster. Chief Gotha tells them the plan: to sail into Moss Lake aboard their ship, the Scotia, named after their local deity, and attract the monster's attention, at which point Lucius and Avin's team will strike to bring it down. Avin expresses surprise at this plan. They've been in Quitt for quite a while now and haven't seen anything resembling a traditional ship. But this question is interrupted by the voice of Oscar, a local villager and captain of the Scotia, here to report to Chief Gotha that preparations are complete and they're ready to sail out to battle the monster. Following Oscar to the dock, Avin's team realizes what's going on. It turns out the entire southern half of Quitt is no village, but instead a massive naval platform, which was the ship that the chief had described. While the party marvels at its construction, Oscar rallies the villagers to work, dispatching the Scotia out to the center of Moss Lake. The gigantic naval vessel slowly drifts forward, its enormous hull granting the entire vessel extreme stability even on open waters. The team separates briefly to make their preparations for the battle ahead. As the Scotia encroach to its destination, Oscar calls for them, sending Douglas off to collect Lucius as the sea monster's appearance is nigh. Douglas finds Lucius at the bow of the ship, looking off into the distance in solemn contemplation. Starting off with an awkward call to action, both of them find some time to be alone with each other. Lucius breaks the silence with the same question again, asking Douglas why he still refuses to use the Thunderblade to this day. For a second time, Douglas remains silent in the face of this question. Lucius then asks him to remember. She had trained relentlessly along with him under the Sword Saint, living in Douglas's shadow, trying her best to surpass him despite Douglas being the second disciple. Aside from Castor, Douglas was the person she admired the most. But then, that day happened. 7 years ago when Lucius was 16 and Douglas 5 years her senior, Douglas suddenly claimed that he wanted to test himself and left their school to become an adventurer. And then no matter how much Castor and Lucius were beside themselves with worry for his safety, he never once contacted them for the next 2 years. When Douglas finally returned, Sword Saint Castor was already on his deathbed. But to Lucius's shock, Castor didn't blame or scold Douglas for leaving them. Instead, the dying saint not only welcomed him back, but also passed the Thunderblade to Douglas, naming him as the inheritor of the Sword Saint's techniques. Though Lucius dare not oppose the final words of her beloved master, this decision never sat well with her. Why did their teacher entrust such a valuable blade to such an irresponsible disciple who would desert their school so wantonly? To add insult to injury, in the 5 years since, Douglas still refuses to wield the blade in combat. To Lucius, his actions serve as a living insult to the legacy of their teacher, an affront that she cannot bring herself to forgive him for. Douglas reconciles with Lucius and tells her that he's felt the same about their master. The Thunderblade to him is a gift valuable beyond measure. And despite the real-life experiences he had accrued over these years, he still feels that he is not worthy to wield the blade. That's the oath he made to himself, until such a day comes when he knows that he is ready. He will not use the sword. That will be his own way of honoring Castor's legacy. Lucius asks when that day will come for him, a question with no definite answer. Though Douglas does remark that since having joined Avin in his travels, he could finally feel that promised day drawing near. Perhaps there's some meaning to that sentiment. Their conversation took long enough that Avin and Rutis came along to grab both of them back. The time to face the sea monster is nigh. And as if right on cue, the Scotia is suddenly rocked by massive tremors. The ship, as if being dragged against its course, is forcefully being brought to a halt. The crew makes their way to the center of the ship, finding the largest monster they've seen yet forcefully make its way aboard. The massive size of the naval platform Scotia completely powerless to stop its ascent. Though just as the group prepares to engage, Rutis suddenly calls for everyone to stop, sensing that the monster before them isn't actually attacking. The crew is surprised to hear this and immediately disengages. To their surprise, not only was the sea monster before them not hostile, it then began to speak, and introduces itself as the one and only water deity Scotia. Scotia speaks to Avin's crew, warning them that the forces of darkness are on the move, and with Ocum's reawakening, her soul is slowly being corrupted and now mutated into this demonic form. Scotia pleads with Avin's crew to descend her sanctum and free her from the corruption before her mind is fully lost, and the fragment of Bardus surrendered to Ocum's forces. Rutis appeals to Scotia, telling her that they cannot enter the sanctum since Scotia's protector appears to be long gone. However, Scotia tells them that the protector must exist. It may simply be that their powers are still latent. Suddenly, Scotia begins to recoil in pain, her voice rising to grave distress, urgently telling the crew that the forces of darkness had come and the door has been opened. Begging them to hurry, Scotia's body once again submerges into the depths of Moss Lake. Realizing something terrible may be happening to the sanctum, Avin and Oscar prepare everyone to make an emergency return to Quitt. The Scotia had barely docked before Serene and Gotha ran to them panicking. A large group of Ocum's cultists led by Borgite had attacked Quitt and abducted Lita. As it turns out, the true protector of Scotia wasn't Serene, but Lita all along. The cultists had taken her towards Scotia's sanctum, and Jimmy was hurt while trying to stop them. Hearing this, Lucius, beside herself with concern, runs off immediately to see Jimmy. They find the boy injured and being treated in Serene's house. Jimmy meekly curses himself for his own weakness, being unable to protect Lita when it mattered. While coming to terms with finally finding someone that he wants to protect, Lucius quietly comforts him, promising him that they will rescue Lita, as Jimmy falls asleep from exhaustion. Leaving Jimmy in Serene's care, Avin's group charges into Scotia's sanctum, Borgai's men already waiting outside to delay them. After swiftly dispatching their foes, the team descends the shrine, fighting their way through to the end past a slew of ancient mystical foes, hoping to reach Borgai and Lita before anything terrible can happen. In the depths of the shrine, Borgai, holding an unconscious Lita hostage, is ransoming Scotia for possession of the fragment of Bardus in her care. While Scotia struggles against her fading consciousness, Avin's crew breaks into the inner sanctum, coming face to face with the Dark Sorcerer once again. The team exchange some fiery words with him, Avin and Rutis in particular, before Borgai decides to dispatch them with some help. Exercising the rituals from the Book of Life, Borgai robs away the last of Scotia's consciousness and unleashes the corrupted goddess upon Avin's party before fleeing the scene. With Lita still unconscious and the deity of water standing before them, the team has no choice but to engage in a brutal battle against a goddess. Scotia's dark powers are horrifying, flooding the arena with endless, unrelenting tides of corrupted waters. Despite the aid of both of the Sword Saint's disciples by his side, this was a brutal battle for Avin. But as the dust settles, they prevailed, even if just barely, and Scotia's corrupted form is banished away. Restored to her old self, Scotia appears and thanks Avin's crew for their timely rescue. It is clear now that Ocum's forces are on the move as well, with the same goals as Avin, to seize the fragments of Bardus for themselves before Avin can assemble them. Knowing that the conflict of gods is once again nigh, Scotia entrusts the fragment to Avin's care, the right leg of Bardus, Delapied. Knowing the conflict ahead is monumental, Scotia bestows an additional gift to Avin, the ability to call forth her strongest servant, the sea serpent Ouroboros, hoping that it will aid him in the trials ahead. With her role in the prophecy fulfilled, Scotia returns to her eternal slumber, as Lita comes to and wakes up in the depths of the shrine. Relieved that the crisis seems to be resolved, the crew takes Lita back to Quitt. As Lita sprints full speed to a still injured Jimmy, the two share a tender moment in the wake of a new budding friendship. As the crew watches Jimmy and Lita from the outside, Lucius concludes that Quitt may be the perfect place for Jimmy to settle down, and give him a second chance of putting his life together. Chief Gota and Serene earnestly thank Avin's crew for everything they've done. The crew decide to stay in Quitt for a while longer, both to make sure Jimmy recovers from his injuries as well as to relax after a brutal battle. As the days passed, Jimmy went on to make a swift recovery and find a new home. The day of their departure came swiftly after, though before they can leave Quitt for good, Douglas and Lucius have one last score to settle. Meeting before the now dormant sanctum of Scotia, Douglas and Lucius stand for a duel. Lucius had dedicated the last 5 years in her desire to surpass Douglas, and Douglas certainly has a point to prove to his fellow disciple. Their differences can only be settled with blades, not words. Douglas, however, proposes a wager to make the duel even more enticing. Should he lose, he will surrender the Thunderblade to Lucius. But if he wins, then Lucius must help Avin on his journey as much as she can. Though she is shocked by these terms, she decides to accept the wager. Lucius, the first disciple of Sword Saint Castor, and Douglas, the man who inherited his blade. Two bitter rivals who once regarded each other with pride and respect in equal share, and with one strike, They are determined to settle their differences. Once and for all. Smug from his victory, Douglas proudly towers over Lucius, admitting that indeed over these past few years she has become far stronger than him, and perhaps his victory here was merely a stroke of luck, but at the end of the day, a win's a win. The duo return to Avin and Rutis, still waiting for them at the exit of Quitt village. Honoring her end of the wager, Lucius approaches Avin and asks to travel with him in his quest to collect the fragments of Bardus. But truly, her motivations to do so aren't purely just from losing a bet. Knowing that Avin is burdened with a great destiny, she hopes that in her travels with him, she too can come to understand the purpose behind her sword art, and what cause she should truly wield her powers for. Avin and Rutis are more than happy to welcome a powerful sword fighter like Lucius into their rank. But before they can depart Quitt for good, Jimmy runs up to say his goodbyes. Though their time together was brief, Lucius and Jimmy part ways on a cordial note. Now that Jimmy has finally found his own place of belonging, they promise each other to both strive for constant self-improvement, until the day they can meet again. With that, the third fragment of Bardus in hand, Avin's crew bid farewell to the lake village, making their way back to Valkid for a report to the Archbishop.